So I saw it tonight. You saw it last night, so we're fresh.
Yeah.
You said you loved it. I thought it was very, very good as well. Within the first 10 minutes, I could tell that I was going to like it because immediately, almost, within the first 10 minutes, you learnt more about the two main characters than you learnt about the main characters in the prequels over the course of 3 entire films. You knew what the motivation of those characters was as soon as they had their first couple of scenes, didn't you? You understood, you were inside their mind.
And those scenes were just spectacular, just visually spectacular as well, especially with the female character and the ginormous landscapes, and she was just scavenging for just a basic meal. And yeah, it was just brilliant. And with the guy that, what's his name? John Boyata, who plays this turncoat stormtrooper, it's just really, really good. I mean, I've got 3 minor criticisms of the whole film, which I suppose we'll come to in a bit, but they're kind of minor. But I'm really looking forward to the watching it again, actually, without the smelly popcorn guy next to me.
It was very striking, though, because in the original trilogy, in the first one, in particular, episode 4, as soon as you're introduced to a character, it gives you a snippet. You don't need their entire backstory because you've got that little piece of their life, which is all you're ever going to get in a film. So you need to get all the information you want in there. And that's one of the things that was definitely lacking from the prequels, wasn't it? Because there were a lot of characters, if you could even call them that. You went through the entire film and you never really felt like you could describe their personality. Would you agree?
Yeah, you knew Han Solo was cool, and you wanted to be him.
But with those ones, you identified their personalities and their relationships. I'm talking about the episode 1, 2, and 3. You couldn't really get into the characters.
Do you know if they were shot on film like these new ones and the really old ones were? They might have done something. Well,
the actors could have brought more to it if there was actual sets.
Absolutely, because there's no doubt in the caliber of acting from Liam Neeson and the guy that plays Gimli in Lord of the Rings. I can't remember the actor's name. He's a Welsh guy. He's in Raiders of the Lost Ark as well. He's in those Star Wars films, isn't he? He's the kind of frogman, leader, or his voices.
They had some fine actors in episodes 1, 2, and 3.
The Emperor is an unbelievable actor. I thought he was amazing. There are great performances there, but unfortunately, it probably looks a bit dated now, which is strange. It looks more dated than the originals.
Yeah, it was overly shiny, and that was one thing that wasn't there in this one that we just saw.
But you've got to
things weren't really, really shiny.
No, you've got to put into context as well that George Lucas had built this empire from his, this Star Wars marketing empire, really, from his own imagination and the people that he worked with. And he was at the forefront of cutting edge innovation in cinema with the green screen stuff and all he did. So it was his playground to do with as he chose. But who would know at the time that people would go all retro and want real things blowing up?
What did you think about the film overall, other than just you thought it was really good? What did you think of the tone? I thought it was very reminiscent of the old films, not just in the subject matter, which of course,
a
lot of it was kind of borrowed or echoed from the originals, but the tone, the way it was focused in the right places. It was on the characters and their relationships and their journeys, rather than like the political disruption or whatever that we had in the episode 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah,
characters were kind of side action.
It's it's A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi all wrapped up in one. So it's basically touching base in every way. So it's hard for me to imagine what the second and third could be like now, because they've covered all the old ground, or recovered the old ground.
I think that was intentional to cover pretty much all the old ground, because really it felt like saying, yes, this is completely part of that universe that you know and love. It's all familiar to you, and now we're going to give you something that becomes more different as it goes on. I have a feeling the next episode is going to be all around, not all, but heavily on the training, because you saw the good and evil, the two rivals that were somewhat evenly matched, even though one of them was wounded. So you can't really tell how evenly matched they are. But both of them were going off to receive additional training in the next episode. So that's going to be the arc, isn't it? Which one of those two can become more powerful, and which one of them is going to be swayed to the other side?
Well, that brings me to my first criticism of the film, because Han Solo's son, was being trained by Luke Skywalker and kind of turned to the dark side, and in disgust and shame, Luke Skywalker has disappeared and turned his back on everyone and retreated to this long lost Jedi temple. But his son is obviously being trained by this supreme evil emperor that looks like the Mekon from Dandare, which is cool. But he's quite powerful already. He can do the mind stuff and make people say what they want to say, what he wants them to say, and he can kill people just with the force of will, and he can stop a laser bolt firing towards him through the dark force, which is all good. But when our heroine starts to awaken her Jedi powers, she suddenly makes a leap from being an utter beginner to actually being a rival, and actually better her rival, which is like, hold on, she's not had any training. How does she suddenly become this good with a lightsaber? That had fun with that.
I think she was generally naturally good at things. Anyway, wasn't she? Whenever she applied herself to something, she was generally good at it.
Yeah.
And it's when she wasn't thinking consciously about it, she could just do it, which is kind of how it's put across the Force. When you're trying too hard, you don't succeed, like when Luke was trying to get the X-Wing out the swamp in The Empire Strikes Back. It just has to be natural.
When Luke can't do something or he's struggling, he hears the voice. He hears the voices that guide him, and you don't hear or see the guidance and where she's getting this from.
I wouldn't say necessarily her being able to better the rival was because she was strong, more so because he was weakened, obviously, and he seemed to have lost focus. Because obviously he'd just done that horrific act, and you saw earlier how conflicted he was about it all.
I'm not sure either why he has so much hate for his mother Leia and his father Han Solo. Where does this contempt come from?
I think we'll probably get more into that in the next episode.
And do you think Han Solo is truly gone?
Probably. I mean, I heard rumblings that he wasn't going to come back for the full trilogy because he just didn't want to do it, because he doesn't like doing it that much.
Yeah.
So I'm sure if they said, well, we want you back, but you only have to do the one, then maybe that was what enticed him to come back in the first place.
Yeah, I can't see him coming back personally, but I think he's given it his all. And probably had more screen time as well in this new film than some of the old ones. I think he's given it all as a sort of a transition point, so that I think the new characters now are quite well established, and it's going to go with them. But that brings me to my second criticism, and that is the snorkel mask, or the anteater mask that what's his name? Kylo Ren, is it, the baddie?
Yeah.
Why does he wear it?
Well, it seemed like he kind of idolizes Darth Vader.
Right.
Because he was obviously his grandfather, and he kind of mastered the dark side, and he wanted to continue down the path of the dark side, but then not be turned like Vader was ultimately. But he's struggling with that, as you see, as he even says that he's struggling with. But
the mask of Vader made sense because you could hear the breathing, and it was a functional mask as well as a deadly-looking one. I mean, the snorkel mask that this guy wears, I don't know why. But my friend said when he watched it with me, he was saying, "Oh, I wish he hadn't taken it off until he sees Han Solo at the end."
Possibly. You do see when he takes it off, it seems like it's not only there to idolize Vader, but it also seems like he's hiding shame to me.
Yeah.
If he looks someone in the eye, then he has to admit, yes, I've kind of turned evil, if you will, and that's still something he's not really come to terms with himself.
Yeah,
so he's kind of hiding from that behind the mask.
yeah, I can see that. And my third criticism is John Boyega's character Finn. Now, watching the first 3 Star Wars, you're led to believe that the stormtroopers are all clones from one guy.
Well, I don't think that was ever actually established in the.
Well, they created a whole clone army, at least.
In the prequels, yeah, but I think they're pretty much being ignored for the most part, which is, in my mind, it's a good thing. Because in episodes 4, 5, and 6, then stormtroopers they had different voices and they would chit chat with each other.
Yeah.
So they definitely weren't clones. So I think that was just something that came in later in the prequels because they thought, well, we mentioned Clone Wars. I know all these guys wear the same outfit. Let's just have them be clones. That seemed like it was kind of shoehorned in and didn't really make sense.
They could have easily tied in both things by showing them being made, a short clip of being made or trained, and you could see multi-ethnic and racial.
They did actually reference a clone army at one point in the film. I don't know if you heard it when they were talking about the training of the stormtroopers, because obviously one of them turned against them and wasn't loyal. And he sounded like he was threatening maybe we should have gone with a clone army or something like that.
Ah.
So maybe there was that clone army in the past, but it's just unrelated to the stormtroopers that came later.
So they're my criticisms, but I love the actual humanity and the brotherhood of the stormtroopers that you see for the first time in this thing. And there's 2 examples of that. And one is when John Boyega, his squad, first leaves the land ship to annihilate this village. His friend gets shot, and he looks down, and he's covered in his friend's blood. And then you just see this brotherhood. And then the second clip is when Kylo Ren is having a mad fit because someone's got away, and he's smashing up the whole room. And the stormtroopers are walking past, hear him having a hissy fit, and then turn around and walk the other way. I mean, there's great humour in this film and like genuine funny moments.
I think the stormtroopers, they did lack a bit of personality before, and it's something new because obviously there was a lot of old stuff in there. So something that we haven't seen before is a stormtrooper turn like that. Another thing we haven't seen, which is the major mistake of episode 1, I feel, is that the most interesting villain was killed off in the final scene. So you think, well, what's the big exciting, like what's coming up in episode 2? Which showdown are we looking forward to? Apart from the one that you know is obviously going to come.
Yeah, I mean the big sort of fights at the ends of the prequels were just. I like the ones with Ewan McGregor in and the Sith Lord. They were in the Sith. That was a great battle, but the ones with Yoda in were just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, episode one was,
and suddenly they're just going at all hype. It's sort of like turbo drive. It's silly.
If you look at the fights with the lightsabers, let's start with episode 4, technically the first one, where you've got Darth Vader and Obi-Wan fighting, and then Obi-Wan like allows himself to be killed. There was that advanced the story considerably, because obviously you had Luke witnessing it, and then you had the spirit of Obi-Wan coming back later, and Darth Vader presented as the subject of Luke's rage in the future, the quest for vengeance against him, which could have potentially led to him turning to the dark side. Then in episode 5, you had Luke and Darth Vader, which is obviously incredibly emotionally charged, and you had the big "I am your father."
That was amazing. That's got to be like the quintessential duel of all time, really.
Then in the next one, in Return of the Jedi, you've got them fighting with the Emperor present, which just adds a whole new element to it. And you see actually Luke Skywalker becomes more powerful as the rage goes through him, which makes you think, well, is what they're saying actually true? Is the dark side actually stronger? Because look at him. Look, he's just pelting away at Darth Vader now and whooping him essentially with the anger.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of emotion in that. And then you come to the lightsaber fights in episode 1, where had Darth Maul escaped after killing Qui-Gon, that would have been great, because Obi-Wan would have been overcome with kind of grief and anger, and he would have been looking for him in the next couple of films, wouldn't he? Looking for that final showdown with the guy that killed his master.
No, I liked him getting killed. I liked Obi-Wan killing him. It felt good.
It felt good, but it was a short-term payoff to sacrifice what could have come later.
Yeah.
So he was killed off prematurely. Had he escaped, you could have looked forward to another duel between them. But overall, the action in it was fairly cool, and you saw someone die. They just didn't really do enough with it later. Then in the next one, was that where they fought Count Dooku?
Yeah, he was a great character because you couldn't decide whether he was good or evil at one point.
He was underdeveloped, I think, though.
Yeah.
I don't think if they were going to make him one of the more intriguing evil characters, they should have put a bit more focus on him and built more of the story on him. But he was kind of a side plot almost, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think the guy that comes out of those prequels the best is Obi-Wan.
But you don't really learn that much about him throughout.
No, but
in episode 1, he barely got any screen time, really. Did he?
Christian it ruins it, and then just his transformation into Darth Vader's a joke, really.
Yeah, episode 3, that really long lightsaber duel. I didn't like that at all.
It was silly. It didn't need to be riding on fire things and floating through the air, and it didn't need that. I mean, the episodes 4, 5, and 6 didn't need that. They used the scenery around them, sure, but their feet were planted on the ground, and it was a skill of lightsabers and wills.
And it doesn't matter how fancy people are jumping around and doing backflips. You have to inject the emotion, and you have to understand what's going through the minds of those characters while they're fighting.
Yeah.
And in the prequels, you never really got a sense for that, did you?
No, I think what happened is they got so carried away with what was possible with the technology that they wouldn't have to build sets, and they could just literally invent any alien environment they wanted to through computer generated imagery. That they got carried away with it, and they went to town with it. But unfortunately, that took away from obviously the acting and everything.
With this one, the lightsaber duel, it's kind of 1.5 lightsaber duels, really, isn't it? Because the non-force wielding guy has a go with the lightsaber, and he's not really that good with it, as you'd expect, because he's not a Jedi.
No.
And then he kind of gets.
Right, though. He's not.
Yeah, he's obviously a skilled fighter, but he's not a Jedi. He'd beat the average guy in a lightsaber duel, but not like a Sith Lord or anything.
Yeah, and speaking of lords, what do you make of this? What do you call this? The first, what do they call it? The First Empire? No, the First Order.
First Order.
The First Order. The leader, is he really this giant, bald-headed, alien-looking figure, or is he just been because it's a hologram? He's bigger.
Well, I don't think he's that big, really. Because if you remember, it may have just been in the special edition, actually, because I think it was Empire Strikes Back, there's like a hologram of the Emperor that he talks to. And then in the special edition, they turned it into this giant head. So there is precedent for someone being drastically out of proportion in hologram. So I don't think we can read too much into him being huge.
Yeah, I don't mind him being huge, to be honest. I don't know.
Well, there are creatures in the Star Wars universe that aren't all the same size, obviously.
Yeah.
So who knows? It would be different, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, there are lots of moments in the prequels that I think are pretty cool. It does have its dramatic moments. When Hayden Christensen goes and slaughters all the younglings. It's pretty dramatic, isn't it?
I'm going to use a wrestling term now. I would call that cheap heat, is what they call it in wrestling. If you've got someone and you want to show how evil they are, they go and pick on someone who's like innocent and can't fight back. Like someone in the audience or a commentator or something, they'll go and beat them up. And then everyone starts booing, but it's seen as cheap because it's not really that creative. They just say, well, pick on someone who's helpless. That means you're an evil baddie now. And it seemed like a really sudden leap, and you never felt he was that good in the first place, Anakin. He was always kind of whiny and temperamental, wasn't he?
Yeah.
It didn't seem like that much of a turn. It was just, I'm kind of whiny, kind of fed up, and then suddenly, whoosh, pure evil.
Yeah. I think someone's written in the comments that Emperor Palpatine, Why doesn't everyone know the name of that actor? Because he is brilliant. I mean, he's in Return of the Jedi as well.
He is. I can't remember his name. I've seen him in other things as well. There's lots of just random TV from like the 70s and 80s he pops up in.
I think he's stunning in all the films. His character's the most interesting one as well. How he slithers through the political world at the same time. He's got this other, he's the one with the most duality in a way.
In terms of the characters in the new one, do you feel you can relate to parts of the three main new characters? So you've got the two goodies and then the big baddie. Do you feel like you understand them from that one film and know what's going on in their minds now?
Yeah, especially with the girl. Is it Kylo Ren? I think she's brilliant.
Rey, the girl.
I think she's great. I think Finn probably going to get killed at some point. He has to die.
Oh, who?
Finn.
Finn.
Yeah. I don't know where his character can go because he's like, I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting, but I'd like to know a bit more about him and what his place is going to be. He's not going to be the lovable rogue. He's not going to be the Jedi. So what's he going to be? He's not the awesome pilot.
It'll be interesting to have someone who, in the originals, you had someone that turned from good to the light, but they were kind of in the superhero tier of people, like the Jedi and the Sith. But now you've got like an average schmuck who's on the side of evil, turned over to the side of good. And if he was quite a pivotal factor in the war, that would be quite interesting. If there's someone like at mortal level for you to relate to who's not this supreme being,
what
that would be interesting.
Is what is his loyalty to the girl so much? Is it because he fancies her? Or is she been a catalyst for him finding the rebels and finding his purpose?
Well, other than the pilot they escaped with, she was really the first real human interaction he had outside of that really regimented, controlled environment, wasn't she? So maybe there's like an instant bond there because of that. That's the impression I got. Like he would have latched on to the first person that he had any kind of outside experience with.
Yeah.
That's what I saw.
There's a great scene with Rey, and she comes across the lightsaber, doesn't she? And she starts to feel the Force, and she has all the memories of being left behind on the planet. And you see the genuinely sad. It's genuinely sad, isn't it? How she's been sort of abandoned, and she's waiting for Godot, in a way, from a famous play. She's waiting, thinking that she's going to be saved by someone coming back to pick her up. I like that story thread's really good.
There's a lot of despair around that character, but also you could tell that she was kind of kind-hearted and everything, just from the opening of the film.
Yeah, and it's not all happy ending roses, because her despair is sort of relieved by meeting Han Solo and believing that he could be a father figure or a mentor to her, and then that's taken away from her.
Yeah, so she's really echoing kind of Luke's path, isn't she?
Yeah.
Because she's thrust into this world and finds out she has the Force. She sees her mentor, who she only recently met but has had a profound influence on her, cut down in front of her. And now she's gone off on her own to train with the wise old Jedi Master. So she could follow the same path as Luke, couldn't she?
Yeah.
And maybe that'll be what sways him round into training her, because he's obviously going to be reluctant. If he went and became a reclusive kind of guy, hiding in that temple because he was so distraught at his failure as a Jedi trainer, he's not just going to jump at the opportunity to start training someone else, is he?
No. And I like Poe, the character Poe. He's the sort of hero. Initially I thought he was Han Solo's son, because when he comes in, he's very like D'Artagnan, dashing, and he's a great pilot, and he comes with no fear, and he almost gets broken, doesn't he? He's a good one, but he seems a bit invincible at the moment as well, doesn't he?
A little bit. What did you think of some of the characters that came back in small parts, like Admiral Akbar?
Yeah.
I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, they didn't look aged though. I would have thought they should.
His voice actually had aged.
Right. I wanted to see more of the band. You know, when they walk into the bar and there's that new band and there's the song that's playing is so cool. It's like an old alien blues singer singing. I'd love to hear more of that song. I really like that. And what I did miss though, you know, the TIE fighters, is the sound of the TIE fighters. Maybe it was the cinema I was in, but I just didn't hear that scary sound of it.
I think that may have been the smell of the popcorn overwhelming you, because I thought all the sounds were very authentic and very reminiscent of the old films.
Okay.
We've got a lot of comments, by the way, so we should probably address some of those things. A lot of people. Oh, Danny said that he's called Ian McDiarmid. That's right, the actor who was the Emperor.
Ian McDiarmid. Okay.
And a few people saying that BB-8 was great. I thought that was quite a cool little droid, and the fact that that is an actual thing as well. It wasn't CG. I found that quite impressive. A lot of the effects actually, because just looking at them on the screen, you just feel like, yeah, that just looks pretty real. It's not overly shiny like CG things, and then you find out, oh, it was actually a model. It wasn't CG.
Luke Skywalker's appearance at the end is amazing. It is stunning, and that must be the most. He must have got paid so much. It's great for him because his career, apart from doing some voiceovers and one or two major films after Star Wars, it must be a great shot in the arm for him to.
I'm not sure though, because I think part of his not appearing in that many films is not through lack of offers. I think
he had a car accident, didn't he, or a bike accident?
I think, as well as things like that, he's kind of chosen to go into other things, and voice acting is something he really likes, apparently.
Right. Well, he's just the look on his face is just perfect at the end. It's just this look of aged wisdom and knowing too much and shame and knowing what needs to be done and knowing what's expected of him and feeling that fear that Yoda was trying to get him to channel into good.
You learnt more in that one facial expression than you do out of some entire films.
Yeah. I'm sure they must have had some script versions where he says something, but nothing's as powerful as what you see there. I'm not sure whether he's just spent the last 30 years, though, living on that little bit of rock.
A picture says 1,000 words, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So that one face expression did more than any one line would have done. I don't think there was any line that would have done that moment justice, really.
No. And it was almost like he knew he was expecting someone to come as well, which is pretty cool. And it's almost like he left behind his lightsaber. He's the symbol of the Jedi. So what does that mean? Does it mean he's like taking a back seat and he's...
Well, technically, that lightsaber that she brought to him is the blue one that he lost when his hand was cut off. So maybe he still has his green one.
Well, the lightsaber, each color means different things, apparently, different ranks of Jedi.
I don't know, but he made himself the green one, didn't he? Because he lost the blue one when his hand was cut off in The Empire Strikes Back. And I don't know how that little alien lady came across it, but maybe we'll find that out as well in the future.
Yeah.
Other comments. The battle scenes looked like something out of 40K sometimes. Yes, there was a lot going on in the battles, wasn't there? But it wasn't too much. They were focused on one part, but it was like, and you had kind of the soldier's eye view of what was going on, just looking around. It wasn't really zoomed out, so you just kind of lost the emotion. You were just looking at all this crazy stuff going on in one shot, if that makes sense.
Yeah. When what's his name? I keep forgetting what his name, don't I? The guy, the pilot guy.
Yeah, I've just forgotten his name. Oh, Poe.
Poe, yeah. The names aren't as memorable, are they?
I'm sure people were struggling to remember people's names in the original films for a couple of days after watching.
Names are better, aren't they? Because you always, everyone knew those names from the off, but these new names aren't. They're not as good.
They could become household names by the end.
no one's going to forget Skywalker, are they? You know, or Jabba the Hutt. But we need better names, I think, for the new ones. But when let's see, I've forgotten his name again. Oh, well, Poe. When Poe goes down for the dive for the dive run he's got to do, and he says, "Right, I'm going to need some backup here." You just knew those guys were going to get killed. If I was Red 5 or whatever, I'd go. I'm just going to hang back a bit. You know, you go ahead. You know, if anyone comes down, I'll look after you. But
you never want to be at the back when you're making like an attack run into some kind of big mega structure.
Exactly.
They always get taken out.
You don't see what happens to the bearded pilot, the sort of heavy-set bearded pilot who looks kind of he could have some bigger part to play. You don't see whether I think maybe he probably got blown up.
We've got Benjamin Powell says Finn and Poe will have a part of the focus of the next film, and that will be the Resistance point of view. Yeah, because the Resistance, they seemed a bit more organized and proactive than the Rebels originally were, because in the original trilogy, the Rebels were kind of always trying to escape, weren't they? And it was very rare that they actually went on the offensive. Whereas the Resistance, they seemed like they're really taking the fight to the First Order because they had official like government backing. So they can afford to do that. They don't have to hide as much. But now, the fact that all those planets got blown up that were kind of supporting them, you feel as though they are going to be shunted back into the kind of rebel mode where they're going to be really struggling to survive.
Talking about planets and planetary weapons, the super weapon is stunning, really. And the scene where those worlds get destroyed is just really amazing. You see those 3 arcs of balls of fire with the music as well. It's pretty stunning. But it's going to be hard to top. It's going to be hard to top what you've seen.
Well, I don't think they need to top that though.
We see the culmination of the prequel of the original 3s in this new film. How much bigger can they take it? Apart from worlds are being destroyed, you can't get bigger than that, can you?
Well, I think they laid out all the groundwork, like I was saying, is it to show us that this is connected to the old trilogy.
So when's the new one coming?
I think the new one is next Christmas.
That soon?
Yeah. So I think the next one, they're probably less reminiscent of the old films, apart from the Jedi training, because I'm sure Luke will have learned something from the way he was taught by Yoda when it comes to the training. And then maybe we'll see the evil training as well, because we've never really seen someone trained in the dark side of the Force, have we? In any of the films.
Sort of. They kind of get you to do cruel things, don't they? Which
But we've never seen the same kind of training that Yoda was putting Luke through from a dark perspective.
No.
We've never seen just, okay, here we are, this remote place, I'm just going to train you until you're ready. We've never seen that, and I think we're going to get it from both sides in the next film. I think that's going to be very interesting.
If it plays to form, then the next one's going to be the real dark one.
It could be. I think with the training, it's definitely going to be quite slow in those parts. Those two are probably going to be off training while there's another fight going on with the Resistance.
Yeah. For it to be truly dark, you've got to have major characters that get killed. Really. In Empire Strikes Back, Han Solo's freezing scene, for all intents and purposes, you thought he was dead,
Yeah, I think it was pretty much the story of the new characters with Han Solo there as the face of the old films to carry you through it, to get you to know them, to keep you invested in the film while you're getting to know these other characters. And the next one, it seems like it's going to be Luke that does that. And then I would imagine in the third one, they'll kind of break free of the shackles of the old films, and it'll be almost all about the new blood.
Yeah.
As they have some kind of huge finale showdown between good and evil, as it always comes down to. Let's see what else.
What about Yoda? Do you think Yoda will make an appearance?
I wouldn't be entirely surprised if we saw like the ghost of Yoda or something at some point.
You could even have, Obi-Wan spirit as well.
I don't think it'll happen, because I think Luke has taken the place of those old wise guys now. So I think he, in that role, is going to be enough. I don't think we'll necessarily need the spirits of his past mentors. but I wouldn't completely rule it out either. I'm sure they'll give us something else to reference back to the old films again. In the
Yeah,
next
I'm
one.
glad they didn't pick really famous actors for the new major roles.
Yeah, there's barely anyone I recognise actually. There was that one, I think you mentioned, the bearded larger pilot. I recognised him from something.
Yeah.
But most of the actors I don't remember seeing in other things.
Yeah, which is good because you don't have any premeditated ideas about them so much.
Yeah, when they're new characters, I feel like I've got to know them as those characters now. I don't just know them as that actor. What do I think they did with this character? I just see them as that character.
Well, I'm falling it. I'm dying here. I'm so tired, man.
Yeah, it has been an incredibly long show tonight. Christmas special and an in-depth Star Wars analysis for everybody. So I think it's about time to call it a night then, isn't it?
Yeah, nice one, Andy. Great show, man.
It has. It's been an emotional roller coaster, folks, and we will see you next week. So, ta-ta for now, and may the Andy and Rem show be with you.